Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of the Medieval folding knife. This is basically how we left it on the last one, and I have done a little bit of fettling since I was last with you. Just wanted to make sure it all fitted up nice and tight and snug. So basically all I've done is made sure, see that you can just see there, they meet up nice and tight. So all I've done is on here run a rasp or file across it, flattened it down, kept it nice and level, because you can see the blade is tapered, and I just wanted to keep that bit where it joins sort of parallel and flat so it doesn't cause any problems. And I run quite a fine file down here to just take that corner out. So that's what I've done to that bit, and then I've done a similar bit of fettling on this one. Again, just made sure that that attachment point is sort of as parallel as I can get it with a file. Again, about the same sort of thickness, about 1/8 I suppose. So when they all come together, that's there as well. I had to file that out a bit just so that comes in nice and tight. So basically, once it's together, both sides almost hit together, that one there and that one on the other side, so that comes up tight as well. It took a bit of fiddling, but you know, it's patience really. Just go steady, don't take too much off at once, keep trying it, fitting it, trying it, rasp a bit more off. I'm not happy with this. I want to thin it out a bit, because when the blade shuts, this is really a bit too thick down the bottom here. I want it to be able to give a little bit so that as the blade passes it. At the moment the blade sits in nicely, but I'd like this bottom bit to come up a bit tighter. It's just making the handle a bit bulky. So that's what the first thing I'm going to do today, is try and adjust the handle. So I'm going to light the fire and give it a go. Right, what I want to try and do, I don't really want to alter this top half from there to there. That fits the blade nicely. I really want to keep that cool and just alter this top half. So what I'll try and do is just heat the top bit, and if necessary quench out the bottom bit so that it should stay as is. So I'm going to make sure my tongs fit good and tight, get it in the fire. And this won't take long to heat up. Got to keep an eye on it and quench it out. So I've just quenched that last bit, and I'm just going to flatten this out, thin it down a bit. I should have done this before I bent it. I should have made it much thinner. I should have thought about it. Instead of keeping it square, a square taper, made it more of a thin taper. Because this has slightly ruined the effect, because it's actually made it wider down the bottom here. I don't know if you can really see that. And I don't really like the look of it, so I'm going to try and alter it on both planes. So anyway, I've called it out and try it again. It still doesn't go past very easily. It still fits nicely in the top end, but I'd still like this bottom edge to come closer down here. So I'll have to get that warm and try again. You can see how much thinner it is, and that I've moved it over, but it still needs to come over more and possibly be a bit thinner. So we'll stick it back in the fire, give it another go. Right, move the camera around a bit because I'm going to use the beak. I want you to be able to see what I'm up to. I'm cooling out again. And I just want to try and thin the material that I've flattened so that it maintains its tapering. As I say, if I'd done this before I bent it, it would have been much easier. So it's a bit of a fiddle doing it this way. And it's very easy to get it out of shape. So hopefully, if you do one, thin this end out both ways, or narrow it rather than thin it down the other way. That's a bit better, but I've come too far now. No, that's about right, but I'd really like this end here to just come a bit round, a bit tighter. So we're going to get that hot. See if I can pull that round without making too much of a mess of it. Alright, I'm going to pull that back round a bit now, which obviously will make that bit go down, so I'm going to bring it back up. Let's try again. It's difficult to see when it's hot. But no, see, that's gone down too far now, the little curly bit, so I've got to pull that back out again. So we'll just knock that out, which is easy enough. Just open it up over the end. Try again. In fact, oh, it's like a bar of soap, this thing. Right, let's cool it out, check it. Right, now that's better. That's still down a little bit too much. I might have to just tweak that up a bit at the bottom there, but that fits better. Right, well, I've got it fitted. I'll just give it another quick tweak. So now it should be just about right. Hopefully when this is all riveted up, you can see that's going to slide past there. You can see what I mean about having to really thin out that bottom end of the handle bit so that this blade slides past. And hopefully it will just be friction tight on that handle. That's what I'm aiming for anyway, whether it will work or not. And you can see the curly bit is up quite tight and the blade still fits nicely in the handle. So I'm going to put the sort of edge on the blade now, just roughly, before we do any heat treating. Before I do that, I'm just going to take this roughness out of the handle where I've been hammering it around the anvil a bit. If I'd done it, as I said before I bent it, then I wouldn't have had this trouble, but banging it around the anvil has just put a few marks in it which I just want to get out before we go too much further. So I'm just going to get this round file in there. Give it a bit of a go. I could obviously have used the die grinder, which would have been much quicker. But obviously some of you haven't got air tools or anything like that, so I just want to show it can all be done by hand. That's much better there. I'm just going to take that little lump off with the square one now. Don't have to do this, you can always leave it sort of au naturel, as it were, as it comes out the fire. But I like to take any really nasty little knobs and bumps off. Now you might see that I'm using the file in a slightly odd way. I'm doing a lot of sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Across, using it more like a draw file. So I'm going sideways with it, that way, rather than up and down that way. And doing that, it just smooths things off much more than if you were doing it the other way. I suppose, yeah, I suppose they call it draw filing, I don't know. But obviously the longer you spend, it's like with anything, the more time and effort you put into it, the better results you're going to get. So, you know, I'm always in a bit of a rush, or majority of the times I'm in a bit of a rush because I just want to get it done. I haven't got masses of time because I obviously have got some proper work to do. But the longer you spend on it, if you're doing this as a hobby and you've got hours and hours you can do it, and the longer you spend on it, the better the results are going to be. You know, I still like to try and get it as right as possible, but right, you can see that's quite shiny now. I shall put this back through the fire, get it all back to the same sort of colour, and then I'll run over it with the wire brush just to clean it all up and sort of meld it all back in, merge it, whatever the word is. So now what I'm going to try and do is just roughly shape the cutting edge of the blade. I'm going to be careful here because obviously this is still very soft because I've not heat treated it yet, so I can't tighten it up too much. I'm going to try and do the worst of it with a flat disc. Obviously that is hopeless. I can't grip it hard enough, so I'm going to do it by hand. Just hold it and just take the worst off. I could have done this, I suppose, taking the worst off on the belt grinder. I can't bother to move the camera, so just going to do it like this for now. All has the same result. Just be a little bit careful that you don't catch the blade and it flies out your hand. Actually, this is getting a bit warm. I think I'm going to have to put it in a pair of grips. You can see basically what I'm doing. And now that is really getting rather warm. Out, out, out. That's hot. Right, that's the way I should be doing it. Pair of grips. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm just sort of feathering it down towards the cutting edge. Now I'm going to have a go with the sanding disc. Not quite as aggressive as the grit I've got on the flat disc. You have to be careful using sanding disc. You don't catch it on the cutting edge because that will A, throw the blade across the room, and B, probably cut the disc badly and possibly even throw the sander across the room. It has happened before. This paper, if you catch it on a cutting edge, that's it, you've had it. So you've got to be very careful to work from the back rather than back towards the cutting edge rather than from the cutting edge towards the back. You see that's getting a bit warm. It's gone nice and blue. Because that's got some warmth, because I haven't done any heat treating yet. It doesn't matter. Right, so now I've done the roughing out with the power tools. I'm just going to do a bit now with good old hand tools. I'm going to file it. So no matter how sort of good you do it with the power tools, you can never do better than doing it by hand. Don't know why, what it is. You just seem to have, I suppose, the human eye, hand-eye coordination just guides the file much better. You seem to see the little imperfections more. I'm just looking there to see how the thickness of the actual cutting edge is coming on. I don't want to get it too thin in one place. So this is quite a fine file as well, so it's taking out a lot of the heavy marks from the grinders. So I'm going to do a bit more, and then we'll go on to the paper. Now I've done a bit more, that was slipping, so I've moved it in the vise, but I've done both sides now. I'm going to put it back in here, and I'm going to have a go with a little bit of wet and dry. I'm not sure what grade this one is, I think that's 240. Obviously if I had more time I'd start off a bit coarser and gradually work my way down to sort of something like 1500. I need to get this wet. Alright, now it's wet, that'll work better. Yeah, again, if you start off quite coarse, a few minutes with the coarse, and get down to the next grit, the next grit, the next grit, all the way down to about 1500, you can get almost a mirror-like finish. Obviously I haven't got the time for that, so I'm just going to give it the basics. I think this is about 320, something like that. Right, you can see that it's been working. The slurry that's formed on the top, and that I'm going to leave like that now until I've done the heat treating, and then I'll finish it off afterwards. Right, so I've got it fairly smooth. Obviously the more you do before you heat treat it, the easier it is, because it's soft. So you want to get as much done really as you possibly can while it's still soft. Because after you've heat treated it, although you can still polish it up, it's hard work. So I'm going to get this warm, dunk it in the oil to actually harden it. This is the hardening part. So I'm going to get it to just over critical temperature, which is just past magnetic. Well, not just over, I'm going to try and aim for critical. You see that's not quite gone past magnetic yet, so it wants to be a little bit warmer. That, by the way, is a magnet that's stuck on the side of my anvil there, or side of my forge I mean. So we just get a little bit warmer, which won't take long. You really need to keep an eye on this, because with it being quite thin, you can get it too hot too quick, really quickly, really easily. Now that's gone past, so there we go. Give it a dunk. And it's amazing how much slower the oil cools it down. A few turns like that in water, that'd be stone cold, but that's really warm still, so I'm going to leave it in there. In fact, that's probably still quite warm now. So I'm going to give that a wipe off and let you have a little look. Right, you can see the muck that the oil imparts to it. I don't know why it does that, whether it's impurities in the oil that stick to it. But we're now going to just clean it up a bit and put the cutting edge on. Right, so I've cleaned it up with some sandpaper, not horrendously, and just touched the cutting edge a little bit, just so that we can see the colours. I'm going to temper this with my blowtorch, so hopefully you'll be able to see all the colours coming through. So I'm going to get that going, and hopefully doing it out here you'll be able to see the colours. It's not the ideal way of doing it, but hey, you know, this is only a demo. I'm not building it for anyone or using it for anything critical. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it matters not. But you want to work your torch on the thicker part. You can see there I've already got it too hot on the bottom of the blade, on the thinner part. You can see the blues coming through and the browns and the purples are working back. So I'm going to work it all on the thickest part of the blade there to try and blend the colour back in. You can see now the whole lot's gone a nice bluey colour, and I'm going to call it a day at that. That'll do for me. Probably would have preferred a strawier colour rather than the blue, but blue's good. Right, so I'll clean that up again, rub the oil off, and we'll have a little look. Right, what I'm going to do now, I'm videoing this through the fly press from the other side of the room, so it's probably not going to show up very well, but what I've got on here is it's like a Scotch-Brite wheel. I don't know what they are, but I buy them from my farrier suppliers for sharpening my knives, but they're marvellous for cleaning up things like this. They're quite abrasive, as you can see from the sparks, but they're much less abrasive than even quite fine sandpaper, so it's really quite a handy little tool for taking out little blemishes, getting the scale off from the tempering, and taking the colour back out from the, take the colour out from the tempering and the scale off from the hardening. So I've cleaned it up basically with that one. Now I'm going to put the ordinary mop on. This is an ordinary polishing mop. Bit of soap. Green one, I'm not sure what the green one is, but it's quite aggressive. So it does quite a good job. As I say, if I'd got more time, I would have done more with the sandpaper, the wet and dry, which would have meant doing less with the polishing and consequently a better finish. But as I say, I haven't got much time. But I want to show you sort of roughly how to do it. Like I said earlier, the longer you put into it, better results you get. Don't rush it. Take your time. Keep checking it, and at this stage, once we've done the heat treating, don't let it get too hot, because it will get hot very quickly and you can end up taking your temper back out. So be careful. Even if you have a little bowl of water next to you, just keep dunking it in, just keeping it cool. You can see there that it's starting to shine up. Just trying to get the last little bits. And so this isn't going to be spectacularly shiny, but then again, medieval knife probably never was. I don't suppose they ever polished medieval knives. You can just see there's still some of the marks from the hardening. Alright, that's got the worst of it out. There's still, as I say, you can see few of the worst marks are still in there, and some of the marks from the hardening, which I don't know why it does it, but it's, in some cases it's quite attractive, but if you spent longer with the sandpaper and all the rest of it, that will come out. But that's going to do for me. Now I've had this back in the fire, and I'm just going to clean it up with the wire brush on the angle grinder. And I really like the wire brush on the angle grinder because it tends to blend the metal in somehow. It takes off the scale and it just sort of blends any rough edges. I don't know quite, I suppose it's just sort of moving the top surface of the metal about, just cleaning it off and smoothing it. Doesn't take any of the marks out, it just makes everything a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer to the touch. I'm just going to go over the worst of it. Again, be careful, because if you catch in a corner, that'll throw that thing out of ice and can even throw your grinder across the room again. Right, so there you go. The camera won't focus over here, it's a bit dark, but trust me, it's looking much better. Right, this is better, you might see it better here. It's just sort of blended everything in. It's all basically the same colour now. I've got to do the inside by hand because obviously I couldn't get in there with the wire brush on the grinder. But it just makes a nice finish. Now let's see if we can think about putting it together. I'm going to use this, it's a hard facing rod, which probably isn't all that hard. And the reason I'm going to use it is because it's a perfect fit. I don't know what size it is, but whatever size hole I drilled in the first place, this is spot on. So I'm going to cut a little nibble off the end and use it as a rivet. Alright, I cut it off, stuck it in the hole. As you can see, the two halves are nicely and tight together, which is what I want to try and keep when I start riveting it. I really need to keep the two halves tight together. So I'm going to try and hold the top one down with my nail and just give it a couple of blows on one side and hopefully turn it over and give it a couple on the other side. But it seems to have got a bit tight already, and it's a little bit away in the middle, but it's basically doing the job. I don't know if you can really see, there's a bit of a gap there in the middle, which I want to try and avoid, because you'll get a lump of rivet in the middle there and it will mess things up big style. So I'm just going to knock this over the edge and try and put the two together. So this isn't actually hitting the rivet, this is just trying to push the two pieces together. I'm just going to do the same the other side, just try and clamp them down and then carry on riveting. Just with the flat end of the hammer, moving the hammer around so that it's not hitting down square, so it's coming down at angles all the way around. So it's sort of mushrooming the end over, rather than just flattening it straight down. I wanted a fairly thick rivet, or not thick, I wanted a fair bit of rivet left, because with this being sort of a friction fit, you may need to just give it a tap up once in a while as it becomes looser. So you just give it a little tap and tighten it up again. So I didn't want it too much of a weedy rivet. So I'm going to just loosen that up and we'll have a little look at it. Alright, give it a bit of a loosen and a bit of a clean up. Get some of the muck off it. It's not perfect. None of my jobs ever are. I think that's quite nice. Nice little shape. It all sits together nicely. Fits quite nicely in the hand. The blade sits nicely into the handle. I think I should have put something to get hold of to open it up, because you have to sort of grab hold of the blade a little bit. But with it being friction fit, you can adjust that. And I rather like that. I think that looks quite pretty. Medieval styled folding knife. I can imagine some bloke sitting there carving lumps out of an apple. But if you compare this one to the one I made before in one of my earlier videos, if I can get it out of my pocket, it's much prettier than this one, but this one has solved lots of the problems that the friction one has, this one, by simply turning the handle upside down. Basically, we turned it from upside one side, well, you can see it's the opposite way up, and that has solved a lot of problems because it's made it a real positive opener, and that top edge really fits in nicely in there, so that isn't going anywhere. That can't open up no matter what, that's really in there. And because we put tension in here, in this bend, it's acting like a spring, so it's really going to hold it there. And again, because there's tension in there acting like a spring, when you fold it up, you have to watch your fingers because there's real spring in it, and that holds it shut nicely. It's not going to open up in your pocket and stab you in the leg. So it's nowhere near as pretty, but I wonder how long it took to discover that just turning the handle upside down, going from this one, the medieval style, to this one. I wonder how long from here to here it took. I don't know if it's decades or centuries or what, but I like the look of this one. I really think this one's much prettier. I'm quite pleased with that. Again, first attempt, you know me. Have a go. Try and get it right on the first go. Could even hold it like that and use that as a finger guard. Never thought of that. Could use it in battle or defend yourself from the wife. Whatever, don't know. But there you go. That's the two. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. I've quite enjoyed it, even though it's been a bit rushed. As I say, I really can't get over that. It's really quite nice and pretty. I really like that. Hope you do too. Medieval style friction folder. So anyway, catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.